Look out, the captain's away.
The Rugby League Hour, brought to you by MicroBio Solutions Limited, makers of Effluix, the new way to clean up dairy effluent and wastewater while increasing the fertiliser value of your irrigation in one easy step. Visit microbio.co.nz for more.
Strong, powerful, try.
Welcome to the Rugby League Hour, everybody. My name is Martin Devlin.
And I'm Tony Kemp.
And he used to be the Warriors coach, and he was coach when they copped a fair few. 66 points from the Titans. The way we roll is the weekend roundup. We look at the results from the weekend points table, so forth. Up the Wires special segment dedicated to the Warriors. He's alleged. Brent Tate's going to join us to talk some Origin. We go head to head. Tony picks his top five. We're always going to catch up today with Zane, the Warriorholic. He is such a Warriors fan, has been for 30 years. He's so happy, so positive about his team. How the hell can he be? How long does it take to sulk and get over that kind of result, Zane? We begin the show the same way, though, every week, which is 6 again. All these questions about the Warriors, Tony. Did you see that coming?
Oh, not by that much, but it was always going to be a tough game up there with Desi Hasler coming off a loss.
Was that the worst ever Warriors loss?
100%.
Worst ever? Worse than the 70 points to Melbourne?
Yeah, I think it was worse because everyone's expecting them to be top of the table this year.
Is there anything positive at all you can take from that game?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Not
Is there
a thing.
even one player who held his hand up and didn't have a bad game?
No.
No? Can the team still make the 8?
Just.
A wholesale change is needed versus Brisbane, or does Andrew Webster give these same guys a shot at redemption?
I think the latter is going to happen, but changes are needed, mate.
The Weekend Roundup.
Only 5 matches played in the truncated round, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, kicked off Friday night. Storm, another narrow win, but they did it against the Dolphins, 30-24.
How good is he, Jerome Hughes? There's a game of the round.
Don't know why. Titans, Warriors, we'll talk about that at length during this. Roosters beating the Bulldogs.
They're back, baby,
Comfy.
in the 4.
Rabbits beating the Sea Eagles.
And that's 4 in a row.
And your man Benji,
I see, give him a chance.
his Tigers,
Yep.
putting it on Ricky Stewart's mob. And Ricky said, they're not tough enough, mate. They're a bunch of bangers, mate. All right, the points table at the Storm, Panthers, Sharks had got a break on everyone. Storm with a 2-point lead there over those two. Roosters in 4th. Same points as the Dolphins. And then we've got Dogs, Broncos, Cowboys. That makes up your 8. Dragons and the Raiders are on the same points. Let's start, though, because we're going to just break before we get into the Warriors. We've got plenty of time to walk our way through the horror of that. Let's talk about the Storm, though, once again. Look, Wayne Bennett said, and I love this from a coach at the end of the game, he said, we didn't lose that game, we just ran out of time. Another 5 minutes, we would have won it. I'm looking at the scoreboard, Wayne, you did lose. And out of their 11 wins so far, Tony, with the Storm, I remind you of this every week, 8 of them have been 8 points or less.
And still got a couple of players that need to come back. No Munster, there's talk about him coming after Origin to try and play the rest of the season out. Peppernouse first game back, and you've got to think no Harry Grant too because he's in Origin. So that was a very good win.
Okay, how do they do it then? How do they keep doing it then?
If you look at it, you're looking at 2 different sides here in the Warriors and Melbourne. If you saw Melbourne, how desperate they were to win that game in that last 5 minutes, they put everything into defence to keep the Dolphins out. That's why Wayne said we just ran out of time. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at the Storm to try and win it. And the Storm, who have been there, coached by Bellamy, I think Bellamy's won the last 12 and he against Bennett. He just doesn't know how to get it won against them, Bennett.
But how do they replace those players that you've just talked about and continue?
It's a system and a structure that they just buy into. And then Craig Bellamy, who just makes sure that players develop and deliver. And the thing about it, Marty, is you've got to remember that Jerome Hughes started at fullback, didn't he? Remember that? He didn't start at halfback. So he started at fullback, and he's developed into arguably the best halfback in the competition, I think. I think he's the best out-and-out halfback that we've got in the competition.
Playing right now.
Right now. And I think Jerome Hughes has got a lot to say about whether or not the Storm win the comp this year.
There's a breakaway 3 at the top. Storm 26, penalty 24, and the Sharks 24. And I know it's only a 4-point lead, but is that significant enough for you to say that those are your 3 top teams now? Yeah,
look, I think 10 weeks of footy to go. I don't think anyone's going to catch the 3, definitely not the 2. I think the Panthers and the Storm can get better. So Pappenhausen's going to bring something extra to the side. You're going to get Harry Grant. You're going to bounce out of an Origin win for Queensland, and hopefully Munster gets back on the pitch. And the Storm and the Panthers, Nathan Cleary comes back for them. I think they're going to start to skip away from everyone up in that top two. The Sharks, can they hold on? Mate, the Warriors, I think they play them their last game of the season. The Sharks could be playing in that game for a 4 spot.
Yeah, Warriors do, and then their last game, of course, is a bye. And don't write off New South Wales just yet. We'll talk to, Tatey about that in a few minutes.
What are you doing wearing black then?
3 out of the 4 bottom sides won. Gold Coast 66 over the Warriors, South 40-0 over Manly, Tigers 48-24. What does that tell you about the competition, or can we just say it's Origin time?
A bit of both. I think, the thing with it, the Warriors need to make hay while the sun shines through the Origin period. We haven't had anyone playing it. Capewell plays in it this Wednesday. You've got Mitchie Barnett, whether or not he gets on the field from 18th man. But they just haven't been able to capitalise on this Origin period. Where the Tigers down the bottom, they've been able to do it. And, of course, the Titans are fighting for their life down there. Get 60 points past the Warriors through the Origin period. So I'm going to say a bit of both. I think the competition at the moment, it just goes to show you how even that competition is from that top 3 down, when the Titans and West Tigers can go out and put big scores on teams that are above them.
Roosters beat the Dogs to go top 4. So the last 5 results of theirs, including, I'll add the bye into this, but the last 5 results, they beat Canberra 44-12 in round 12. They lost to North Cuse 18-16 in round 13. They had the bye. Then they beat the Eels 28-18. They've now beaten the Dogs 26-8. Tigers are to come. Are they top 4 to stay?
I think they're the scariest team that the other teams will be looking at above them. Sharks, Panthers and the Storm will be looking at the Roosters. The thing about the weekend was the way that Brendan Smith bounced back. So he's been stood down all week. They're talking about sacking him, and then he goes out and he turns in a performance like that. It'd be, if you were Trent Robinson, you'd be looking at it going, mate, he could be a bit of a smoky for me going into that back end of the season. So I just think they've got class right across the field. I think on that right edge with Joey Manu and the big boy from England out there on the wing. You look at their back rows, you look at the way that Jared's closing out the season with his Queensland front row mate and Brandon coming back in the side. I think they always look like a top 4 side, and now they're in there. I think it'll be hard to get them out of it.
We're going to dedicate the next 14 to 15 minutes to the Warriors, ladies and gentlemen. But before we do that, Zane Inglis, the Warriorholic, and that's his Twitter handle, that's his TikTok and his Facebook and his YouTube and everything else. A man who has supported the team for close on 30 years, been a season ticket holder since 1995, one of the most positive people that I know when it comes to talking about this team. So before we start, rip, snort and bust, just explain to us how you can still stay committed to the cause and still believe in this team. Are you over it yet, or how long does it take you, pal?
It's odd, mate, because it used to take me the days and days to get over this. It'd probably be Thursday before I'd be looking towards the next game, but I don't know if it's old age or perspective or whatever, but I went through the full range of emotions within about 2 hours, and you kind of experienced half of that. And it's just curiosity now to try and figure out what's causing this debacle and how Webby goes about fixing it. I'm kind of excited to see who gets named this week.
So as a fan, as a lifelong fan, do you feel anger still? Are you just in a state of shock, or are you like me and thinking, I've got all of that, but the only thing that's important is what happens next? Yeah,
mate, I felt anger, I don't know if it's anger or frustration. I was pissed off, would be a good way to describe it, for the first sort of 15 minutes. But then it was just like, there's that feeling in your heart where you think it's just going to be one of those days, and I was kind of resigned to it. And I feel way less frustrated this week for some reason than I did last week against the Storm. That really annoyed me because I felt like there are certain areas we could have controlled and won that game, but it's just like, I was watching guys in, quicksand all night. So I kind of just felt sad and felt sorry for those guys, because imagine having to go to all those post-match functions and look all the Queensland fans in the eyes who have spent hundreds of dollars or whatever, thousands to get there on the back of that.
Well, it's their fault. They did it. No one else's fault, mate. They're the ones missing tackles. They're the ones called feeble by the commentators.
Yeah. So, I just can't put my hand on it, mate. It's like, how do you miss 44 tackles? It's like, what triggered that? I just, me, I'm always trying to find the reason behind things, and I can't come up with anything that I can say with fact, but I seriously wonder what's going on within that team to just let your mates down like that. And The one thing that really stuck out to me by the end of last night is there's one guy who's been the glue this whole season, who's been the biggest voice on the field, and he's always the last guy to give up a chase, and that's Mitch Barnett. And I think we saw the difference not having that one leader who was prepared to just basically put guys in their place last night. We saw guys taking their knees, as soon as someone passed them, basically bent over. And I don't think they do that with him on the field more than a couple of times. He would have held them accountable. But I just heard from fans who were in the stand that Tohu just sort of stood there quietly behind the post while other guys bickered and argued. So on-field leadership has to be a big factor.
What has to happen now?
Look, my feeling is Webby will give the majority of these guys a redemption chance against the Broncos. But if they can't turn this around and prove that they're actually back in, it's like you want to bring these young guys in. But I mentioned this on a post last night. If there's some kind of, I don't know what you call it, toxic behaviour going on within the camp that I don't know of, but I get a feeling after hearing about those guys bickering and arguing that obviously guys are struggling with losses. Do you really want to bring these young high potential players into that environment unless you've got someone to basically look after them, a guy like Mitch Barnett, because it could end up being detrimental to their careers.
Oh, superb!
Up the wires.
How good is that?
Tony Kemp is with me, former Warriors coach, and courtesy of MicroBio Solutions. This is the Rugby League Hour. All right, Tone. So you've just listened to Zane as well, who's being as nice as he could possibly be. I've had a text in here from Grant. He says, Martin, I can't believe how soft you're going on the Warriors. I've got to say your presentation today is about as soft as that disgrace we saw on Saturday. And I appreciate that, Grant, and I respect that opinion as well. But as I said at the start of the show, Tony, to me, it's like Man United losing 7-0 at Liverpool a couple of years ago. Now, I could have given up on that team. They've broken my heart so many times, but we still had something to play for at the end of the season. And at the end of the season, making the Champions League put a perspective on it. That's all I'm clinging to with the Warriors at the moment. They make the top 8, then it takes some of the ugly out of this. It doesn't paper over it, but at least there's still that to play for. How do you put any kind of a positive spin on what you saw on Saturday night?
Yeah, look, Zane, he's a fan and he wants the Warriors to win, so he's coming from that angle that he'll look at all the positives rather than actually look at what's going on. And there's some real simple stats here. All right, he's made 13 tackles. He's missed 6 of them, the halfback. All right, he's ran 10 times for 50 metres, so he's hardly getting over the ad line. And he's got a right foot down that right edge. It's so predictable on a kicking game. And I said this to Lockie beforehand, like when you're looking at a halfback, okay, and a halfback, there's a difference between a good halfback and a great halfback. Even when they're losing by 40, they're going to have a shot at a 40-20 because they need to change the momentum. They're going to look at something. Back in my day, it was like get in and carry the ball for the forwards and start to wind them up, or start a blue or something like that. You know what I mean? So there's a difference between good and great. And at the moment, for me, forget about what's going on off the football field. There's a thing here called leadership, and it needs to start at the top, and it needs to come from Andrew Webster. I'm not looking at the players. Sean, you can bag Sean until the cows come home. We did that last year and the year before, all right? And he had a very good year last year, and he has been very ordinary for a long time, off and on. He hasn't been an Andrew Johns or a Jonathan Thurston or a Cooper Cronk, okay? And what needs to happen now is this is about Andrew Webster, because I want to see what he's going to do. So you can talk about all the innuendo and what's going on behind the scenes. I want to see what Andrew Webster's going to do about it. Now, you can pander to the blokes like Zane, and you can drink the Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? And you can say, like, this is us, and we're packing out the stadium, and we're the Warriors, and we've got the cool socials and the medias. But I'll tell you what, you get kicked in the arse for 60 points. You better hope like hell you show up and play next week. And I need a team out on that football field that are going to deliver. And what we've seen, all right, and this is about the context of how they played the 3 weeks beforehand, before Sean came back for the last 2, was that they opened up the football field and they put everyone into the game.
You've been saying this for 2 weeks, but you can't. So is it all Sean Johnson's problem? Because the easy answer for Andrew Webster here is Sean Johnson's got a hamstring, so he won't play this weekend. Okay, so that makes it easy for him. He's not dropping him.
No, look, I don't think Sean plays this weekend.
No, he doesn't, because he's an injury.
And again, you look at that way that he carried himself through that last 20 minutes. He was just left out there to bear it like the rest of the players who went there. But I don't think Adam Flewer-Blake wants to be there. I don't think you can blame it on one bloke. If you look across the board, you got, Louis going through the middle of the park running for a 50-metre break. Like, go back and have a look when was the last time he did it. The amount of players that didn't put their body on the line, you can tell a hell of a lot by contact, Marty. all right, when you're watching a game of footy, if you see contact and it hurts in games and you know that your boys are putting an effort and you get beat, it's a hell of a lot easier to take. All right, but when you listen to someone like Zane or a fan who says, "Look, I'm not as frustrated. I'm frustrated from the get-go because they're not having a dig."
Well, where does that come from then? How has that happened that after the first 14 or 15 minutes against the Storm, we've shipped 104 points. We've shipped almost 206 games. And I asked you last week, 38 points to Melbourne. Is that a worry? Because we'd, conceded 38 within 5 weeks twice. Where has this come from in 2 weeks or 3 weeks that all of a sudden this team has just collapsed like this?
Well, has it come in 2 or 3 weeks? All right. Have a look. Let's go back to Melbourne right at the beginning of the year. They had that game wrapped up with, 8 minutes to go. And you get down to the last play of the game and Xavier Coates goes over the top of them, scores a try and steals it from no one saw it. All right. How many times have they started with a 12 or 14-point lead and got
about
one
half
down?
About half a dozen so far this year.
So has it been 2 or 3 weeks? No, it isn't. So it's a little bit of an issue, isn't it? That, we'll jump out of the gates, we'll get going, but we can't hold it. And then you're looking at I remember talking to you at the beginning of the year, what do you reckon? You got to look at the legs, the Ks on the clock, whether they can keep the momentum going. And these young blokes, and you have a look at let's have a look at the Titans and Tigers, for instance, on the weekend. Have a look at how many young blokes they got running around in those sides. Just chewing up the middle of the park and winning that middle of the park. Even let's have a look at Souths on their 4 wins. All their front rows are out. They've just got a couple of young kids in there. They made Colin Matangi back to the middle of the park because he's fast and he's getting quick play the balls and they're winning in the middle of the park. And then you've got the likes of Damien Cook comes back onto the back end of it. We've got blokes at the moment through that middle of the park. Yes, he's right about Mitchie Barnett. He's having a stellar year.
But you can't just say one guy, because if he turns around and says that, and I didn't argue that with him, but I mean, if you're looking at Mitch Barnett, you're looking at Tohu, you're looking at Sean, you're looking at Adam, you're looking at all of these guys that have got games and many, many games of experience. Look, you've been in this position where it's been frustrating as hell as a coach, where the players aren't performing, where they do get belted like that. So what does he do? Does he drop players? Does he put some on notice? Or does it make more sense to let those players sort it out for themselves? Or is he running out of time here? When you look at the schedule, there's 11 rounds to go. One of them is a bye for the Warriors. And does he revert back to what we saw with the Panthers, the Dolphins and the Cowboys and let the old guys or the more experienced guys have to play their way back into the team?
Look, it's saying you've been here and done that before. It's different, Marty. I was 34, now in my 50s, and I don't have the pressure of Andrew Webster getting the public looking at him every week to make these decisions. So I've got no blinkers on. So my view on a football game is uninhibited. So I'm open to what I'm seeing, and if it was me, it's easy enough to me. Well, this is what I see. What should be happening. But when you ask a question like that, what would I do? Well, I'll tell you the first thing I would expect is that my assistant coaches are offering me something. Yeah, so they're saying, mate, it ain't working, all right? And they can give you stuff like, well, we were doing a lot of things that weren't working. We went back to the way that we were training, and we looked at the second grade, and they were leading the way, and blah blah blah. Drink the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'd be looking at my there should be robust debate going on in the coaches' clinic and stimulation in and around the way Webster's thinking to question the decision making, to say, well, I'm giving you options and I don't care what you say to me. You need to listen to what I'm saying, because I'm making these assumptions on the way that we're playing, and I'm offering you something different. That's what an assistant coach should be doing. The second thing is get your head out of the club. What do you call that? Marketing train. All right, the
PR puffery, all of that. Okay,
all the PR crap that's going on with socials and stuff like that, and pumping your players up. And I'm sort of not into that. I think it looks pretty and it's really cool for people to look at. But from a player's perspective, if you're a coach, get your head down your ass up and get out there and do a job. And I think he needs to get out of that. And the last thing I'd say is now make a decision on what the team looks like in the future, or what you want it to look like in the future. Because if you're saying you're going to do these things, and we're talking about things that are happening off the football field, we got no idea whether it's true or not, mate, we'll start looking at your future. Like, if Adam Blake doesn't want to be here, let him go.
Well, I've always said that. I love that Alex Ferguson thing. A guy doesn't want to be at the club, let him go. I mean, what is the point of you staying if you don't want to stay and play? There's no. But I don't know whether that's true. Look, I'm going to read you this. So this is a guy called Aaron Pearce. He said, being at the game so close to the ground after the first try was scored, and he posted this on the Warriors Facebook page. I could not believe the bickering and disunity behind the post. This is clearly a team that is not happy and unified. I'm not trying to put in the boot here, but this was an embarrassment for the club, and the players are clearly not united. We've heard rumours persisting about this for weeks, and I don't know whether they're true or not. And no one at the club is ever going to put their hand up and say, well, there is actually problems off the pitch, because the Warriors have a publicity machine at the moment that is only positives, right? Is what you're seeing when you see a lack of urgency in defence and commitment in defence, is that reflective of that? Because we're constantly told on this side of the microphone that defence is attitude. So that says to me that's a bad attitude when you're conceding points like that.
Yeah, well, see, I think the attitude is manifest, Marty. You know, like when you've got... See, I'm thinking really trying to make this as simple as possible when I'm explaining it. When you've got someone like Tamari Martin in 7 and what we've seen with CHT at 5'8", and Chance at the back, you've got a sort of a triangle in that spine that is moving all over the pitch. And if you look at the kicking game, just as one instance, it's down both sides of the pitch. Yeah. And the reliance of other people to get into the game, because these guys are moving around on both sides of the pitch and Chance is moving with them, brings everyone along. It keeps the wheels turning. Now, this isn't Sean's fault, okay? Because Sean's a star. So when Sean comes back into the side, I think there's complacency from the team that says, well, Sean's going to get us to that spot and he's going to get us to the kick. And a lot of guys take a breather. And they don't push hard, and they don't do what they're meant to be doing. And I remember watching a couple of kicks on the weekend on a chase. Roger was the only one who really chased the kick, and you get a lot from a kick chase. And I'm going, mate, looking at Zach Lomax chase a kick and look at the Warriors chase a kick right from the get-go, not on. There's the effort's just not there.
Well, you could see the desire from the other team was that, look, but this is what I mean. This is what we're trying to find out and trying to answer.
And I'm only
here.
using Zach Lomax as a context because of how hard he chases for St. George. Like when those kicks are going up, it's you're competing for everything.
Yeah, but this is what Stacey said to us only a matter of weeks ago. We asked him, how did you get this team to beat the Panthers, the Dolphins and the Cowboys? And remember, he just said, we went back to basics. We did simple things like kick chase. Are you up there in a line? Are you defending like that? What we're trying to unravel here is how can you go from that and it all to go so completely wrong? Because most of those players, take away the halves you're talking about, most of those players played those games. 7 or 8 of those guys that won those games were out there on the weekend.
Yeah. So who do you look at here? Okay. So we'll talk.
Let's blame the coach, because we always blame the coach.
Well, no, let's not blame the coach. Let's look at the coach for some leadership. All right. Like Roger's not a centre, mate. I don't know
the injury he has to play.
I don't know how many times we have to sit here and watch Roger Tuivasa-Sheck play at left centre, and then everyone go, "Well, is Roger going to play?" Like, mate, put Chance there. Like, change it up. Get Roger back at fullback, because I'll tell you what, you get Roger back at fullback, you know what you're going to get. Yeah? And you've seen Chance play centre for the Kiwis. You've seen him play 5'8" only 4 weeks ago, and he offers something different. Like, change the two cogs around to see if you can actually get some spark going. And the tiredness around Sean.
Why does this team need spark, mate? Why the hell does this team need spark? They've got so much motivation.
Because they get beaten by 66 points by a team sitting on the bottom of the table, Marty. That's why they need spark.
Yeah, but for 15 minutes against the Storm, they looked as though they were the best team in the competition, mate.
15 minutes against a lot of teams, they look like the best team. But guess what? The game goes for 80 minutes. It's pretty simple. And the expectation of everyone in New Zealand, I think this year, the frustration is going to start to grow over these next 10 weeks, because we're all sitting here after last year's effort going, it's the same team. It's been strengthened with Capewell coming in on board. You know,
Roger coming in.
Sean picking up you should have picked up the Daily M. We're going to kick on here. We're going to be in the top 2 with Penrith and Melbourne, top 4. And then we're in 15 points, mate. And lucky we got 2 buys up there, Steve. We're fine for the wooden spoon. You know, it's everyone in their heads going, man, at this time of the year, in Origin, I thought we were going to be kicking into the 4. But we're not. And that's the play. See, I'll tell you one thing about players. They're mercenaries, mate. Players, if you pick them, even when they're out of form, they'll just love it. And they'll just keep going because the coach is making a decision. Sometimes you have to make a decision that is not what that senior player wants to be able to hear or actually have to put up with.
We've got Brent Tate on hold, and he's going to join us. We'll talk some Origin, but also being a former Warriors player, he can actually dive into this debate as well. I'm going to end you on this, and then we're going to come back to it because we're going to debate head-to-head on this as well. I asked you right at the start, can the team still make the 8? And listen, you know, we can bitch about this loss as much as we like, and as I said right at the start of the show, mate, every Warriors fan has a right to be absolutely furious about this. You can rip your season ticket up. You should be. You shouldn't take it. But at the same time, if you want to end the season on a sulk right now, go and do it. But I'm not prepared to do that because I still believe that this team can make the 8.
Well, they can make the 8, but it's a hell of a run home. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so they got the Broncos this week. This game last year down at Christchurch, they lost. Down in Hawke's Bay, they lost.
No, it was Napier, yeah.
All right, the same team. They had an Origin side out, and they went down there. They were meant to go and win that game. It was returned for Tohu, and they lost. So
then we got the Bulldogs away. Then we got the Raiders away.
Okay, so they got the Bulldogs fighting for an 8.
Yeah, and the Raiders fighting for an 8. Yeah, we got the Raiders fighting.
They got the Tigers fighting to get off the wooden spoon, and then they come up against Parramatta and the Dolphins. The Power Eels are sitting on the bottom, and the Dolphins are fighting to stay in the 8.
Then you got Manly, and they're fighting to stay in the 8. Then you got the Dogs again.
So every team that they've got on the run home needs to win.
This is the measure of them, isn't it? What have you got then? It's the same as I said, Man United losing 7 to Liverpool. What have you got?
Well, it's simple. You want to be putting a team out there that puts in an effort every single week, because you can't have a team that puts in that on the weekend.
So we can say, so if I'm the coach and I'm just saying, I'm looking at you, and you played like us and you didn't put an effort, I'm axing you now.
So what did he do 3 weeks ago? Exactly that.
Well, he had to. He was forced by injuries, right?
That's right. And what did they do?
They won 3 games on the trot.
Because of what? Because of effort. Because of effort, and they had some really good halfbacks leading them around the pitch and opening up the whole pitch for them, and they got 3 wins against teams we didn't think they were going to win against.
Team naming Tuesday tomorrow, people. All eyes on it. 3:32 time. This is the Rugby League Hour. We break. We come back with Brent Tate. We'll talk some Origin. Still to come, TK's top 5, and we'll go head to head. More ding dong on the Warriors.
He's a ledge.
Rain's delayed play, wet outfield. Looks as though it's going to be a point apiece with the South Africans and the Windies, which means the Yarps go through to the semi-finals. He is a Queensland legend. He played for the Warriors, of course, sandwiched in between his stints with the Cowboys. He's here to talk Origin and Warriors. It's a very warm welcome back to the show. We love him to bits. Brent Tate. G'day, mate. How are you?
Hey, guys. How are we?
Hey, Tatey, what do you make of the Warriors on the weekend against the Titans?
Oh, mate, unfortunately, it was poor, wasn't it? Just a real lack of, I guess, commitment and attitude, mate. To get beaten 66-0 is, or 66-6, I should say, not great, mate. And, I think, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, they were performing really well without a whole host of stars, and then, the guys come back, the big names, and all of a sudden, the attitude's been poor. So, it's a tough one at the moment, but they'll need to fix it up quick, smart.
Brent, when you see, I just wrote down straight away commitment and attitude, and then you mentioned attitude poor as well. And I suppose what all fans are trying to put their finger on is where the hell does that come from, and how do you rewrite that?
Well, I think when I talk about attitude, the biggest thing I reckon about attitude in rugby league is your defence. That just all comes down to attitude, and when you're slightly off, you rock up to a game and your attitude's not quite right, that's where it gets found out. It's the little things in your game too. I reckon, when you're on and your attitude's right, your kick chase is good, your wrestle's good, you're working from mark, all those little things a lot of people don't see. That's where your attitude starts, and mate, where it comes and when it goes. Look, I've been a part of games where you've been flogged like that, and the harder you try, the worse it gets, and then you try and start looking after your own patch, and then that becomes worse because you start worrying about it yourself and not the team, and it does snowball. And one thing I do know about rugby league is that it's easy to turn around. It really is. It is just about getting your attitude right and having that real defensive mindset. And once you've got that right, then the rest of it comes off the back of that. And the Warriors can do that because, they've got enough attacking weapons in their arsenal. It's just, defensively, they just, on the weekend, they were just really bad.
Yeah, they something like 50-odd missed tackles, Tatey, which isn't good for any team when they're playing at that level. But what about the competition this year, Tatey? Watching the teams... Like twice on the weekend, get the Titans and the Tigers come from nowhere to put 40 and 60 points on teams. What have you noticed about the comp this year that's been different than other years?
Mate, just the consistency. I've noticed, outside of really Melbourne and Penrith and maybe the Roosters, mate, just consistency. Teams just don't have it. And I don't know whether it's because there's a whole heap of younger guys playing in the competition now and probably it's a young man's game, and then that lack of experience throughout the whole of competition. Mate, I don't know what it is, but just all teams trying to find some consistency week in and week out, mate. It's just really, really difficult. And I just wonder, back when I played, most teams were pretty consistent. You turn up every week and you sort of knew what you were going to get. But, mate, at the moment, like you said, with the Tigers and the Titans on the weekend, and Canberra have been up and down all year. The Cowboys are the same. Like, mate, there's just absolutely no consistency in their game at the moment, and it's just a real challenge for coaches, just week in and week out, getting a good, consistent performance from 17 guys that run out. They're not even 17 guys. You probably need 12 or 13 guys playing well, and you can have 4 or 5 off, but. Mate, at the moment, teams just are really struggling for that consistency.
Brent, we wanted to talk to you about Origin as well, obviously, but I mean, it just the Warriors thing is just looming. It's like there's a bloody beast in the back of the room that just keeps staring at you. But I'm trying to put it in a context like, say, for Queensland and you blokes, and that just wouldn't happen. Even if you were selecting 13 players from the Ipswich B grade side or something, they just wouldn't. They'd go in there and they'd do whatever it takes to put their bodies in position to try and stay in that game and play in that game. So this is what's so hard to get your head around. I mean, these Warriors guys are better than this. Individually, they're all better than this. So how do you kind of reconcile that?
Oh, mate, I think, and I'm sure Andrew, he's a wonderful coach, mate. I think at the end of the day, they've just got to go back to, honestly, being really basic around how they play footy. And not only play footy, mate, how they prepare each week. Like, individually, everyone's got to make sure they're ticking everything in their preparation throughout the week to go out and play well on the weekend. And when they get to the weekend, it's just got to be really simple, mate. Because at the end of the day, I sometimes think we all overcomplicate it. It really is, you hold the ball, you tackle well, and you run. More often than not, when you've got a talented team, you're gonna win more games than not. And that is absolutely the case that there is. So, if I'm Andrew Webster, I'm talking to the boys about keeping it simple, and I'm absolutely stressing, the importance of their preparation and making sure they're ticking every box away from the footy field, so that they can prepare well and get themselves ready to go on a weekend and have that mindset of we're under siege. We've just got to bloody play hard, tackle hard, and defend with our, like our lives depend on it, and play a really simple game. It's
an interesting point you make, Tatey. That yourself when you're playing, you're up against the player, and even when you're watching, your team go, you're winning all those little battles. You may have beaten your player that you're up against, or your forwards are starting to get you some momentum going forward and stuff like that. But it just seems at the moment that they haven't, when you're saying 12 or 13 players, they haven't got that 12 or 13 players that consistently want to do that every week. Do you look at the Warriors with the experience that they've got and think maybe they need to rotate players a little bit more? Or is it just up to those older heads to pull them out of where they are at the moment?
Oh, mate, I think at the end of the day, the older guys, the experienced guys are the ones that have got to be setting the standards, on and off the field and making sure that they're delivering each week, because it's really difficult as a senior player, and I've been there when you're not playing well yourself and you're trying to set the standards and get out there and, lead the way and you're out of form yourself. But I think, that's where I go back to just making sure you're almost a little bit selfish in a way around, making sure your prep's right. And when you go out on the field, you're winning every one of those little battles on doing everything within your power, like all those small things that are really hard to do in footy. Like for me as an outside back, kick chase every time it was something that seems so easy but really hard to do, but making sure you're just doing those little 1%ers and all those things that you play well, and that feeds off onto the rest of the team. So I don't think rotating players, mate, would help. I guess he's probably just got to get that balance right within the team of having that youth and experience, because, when they had that win against Penrith the other day, there was a lot of young guys out there playing really well and playing hard. And I've seen that with the Cowboys this year too. They played the Roosters a couple of weeks ago and, mate, they were outstanding. It was just the younger guys who, appreciate the position that they're in and want to compete hard and do well. And, maybe some of those older guys take that for granted at times.
All right, I'll tell you what, don't cry. Just wait till Wednesday night, mate, because, you beat 12 Blue players last time, okay? Play 13 on 13, Brent, all right? The other thing, mate, before I go, play to resume, people, in 10 minutes, apparently, in the cricket. you know, Afghanistan beat your mob in the cricket, mate, and if there's nothing else that will take just a little bit off that 66 points, it's when Australia lose at cricket.
Yeah, I knew you guys would be really happy about that.
Of course, mate.
I was hoping we weren't going to bring that up, but yeah, there's mate, talk about attitude. I mean, Australia have gone into that whole series with a really, I'd say a laxy-daisy attitude, the way they've prepared and the way they've gone about it. So, mate, attitude in sport, it's everything. It's such a mental game.
Love you to bits, mate. Thank you so much for joining us again. Appreciate you.
Up the mighty Maroons. Cheers, boys.
Okay, see you later, Brent. Thank you so much.
Head to head.
How do they get the attitude back?
Well, mate, I think they get the attitude back by the coach making some tough calls and putting players out there that are willing to put the 80 minutes effort in. Tatey's dead right, you know. When he says that, it's all the little things that people don't see. It's like getting out a marker, you know, making the double, triple tackles. You're chasing the kick chase when you and the getting to the kickers and all those little things that don't go rewarded. And just outlasting teams, you know, because that's what's happening at the moment. They're losing the little moments and they're not sticking there to try and get them back.
It's easier for us fans to do, and we can mope and we can sulk for it. How long as a player, how long in that team do you dwell on what happened on the weekend? Because it shouldn't be forgotten too quickly in my book.
Not at all. Like I think you can't forget about it when you got us talking about it on a Monday, and you've got to put up with it until you get there to try and rectify. The good thing about rugby league is that you get 7 days before you can turn it around. And against the Brisbane side that's depleted on the weekend, and they're going to have those Origin players that aren't there, it's a must-win game. Like this is the game that they've got to win this year. Okay, so forget about all the others. If they lose this game on the weekend, I think that's their season done.
Lachlan, give us some stats about when the Warriors got polled by Penrith 60 points and they were laughing and giggling afterwards. They got dicked by Melbourne by 70-10. What happened in the 2 games immediately following those results?
Well, in 2013, after that loss to Penrith, they beat the Knights the following week in Mount Smart, who, by the way, made the top 8 that year, the Newcastle Knights. And then against Melbourne in 2022, when they lost and conceded 70, the next week they beat Canberra, who made the top 8 that year as well.
So the only thing we learn out of that is that Brisbane's going to make the 8.
And that the Warriors are going to win their next game, if you believe in statistics and the way that they roll. You said at the very start of the show when I asked you, did you see that coming? You said yes. You couldn't have seen a 60-pointer.
Not 60 points, but I'd seen enough to say that over time with the team that he'd been picking and the way that they'd got to that time where all of those players were out and you'd brought those 3 changes through the halves and at fullback with Chance moving there and back, that there was enough to say you're going to go back to the same old. And it has happened. Like it's like deja vu. So you need to go back. Like have a little bit of faith in the team that you selected and go back there.
Tony, is it okay for players to bicker and argue? And is it okay for them to do that on a field? Does that happen in a winning side?
No. I'll tell you, I've had experience of that, Marty, with a very, very good friend of mine. You know, he got under my skin. We were on the same team, and he wanted the football. He's a very good centre. You know, played for his country, and he got under my skin. You know, and I just I'd lost all direction in the football game. I was more interested in like giving him a tune-up than anything else. And I think once you start to bicker as teammates, you just lose your focus. And you lose your energy.
Can you get that back afterwards? Can these guys who might have been fighting under the posts and saying things to each other, can you turn up on training on?
Well, it depends how toxic the environment is at the moment, Marty. Like, you know, there's a few things. If Adam Fanua-Blake wants to go, I'd let him go. You know,
but I wouldn't let him play the rest of the year. I'd say, dude, you're not playing unless we get a player that replaces you.
Yeah, and you know, again, you're looking at there's other club trying to save face and say, no, there's nothing wrong. But then it's starting to play out on the football field that, you know, that bloke that we know can put those efforts in like last year's just isn't doing that at the moment. So you got one thing you've got to remember, last year was unusual in the fact that all of those players were at the top of their game.
That's right. They're the best ever seasons.
You know, Wade Egan, right up until Origin was picked, was in the top 3 hookers and talked about being on the bench.
Well, that's another question. I've got 2 to go. When I asked you at the beginning, was there one player who held his hand up and didn't have a bad game, and you said no? How can that happen where all 13-plus year reserves are all bollocks on the same day? Surely one guy
No, well, I'll tell you what. I don't even, and this is. I really like Montoya. I think he's a great guy, and I didn't even know he was out on the pitch, mate, till the 50th minute.
I saw chance missed tackles. I haven't seen him miss all year. I've seen getting turned around like a turnstile.
You know, it's just.
Which is just, I couldn't believe it.
And Tatey's right. There are these games where you go out there, and no matter how hard you try, you just get deeper and deeper into the hole. And it was just one of those nights for the Warriors.
So when you say it's one of those nights, finally, before we go to another quick break, is it? Is redeemable the word? Is it recoverable?
Everything's recoverable. To redeem yourself, you don't want to go into this game against Brisbane and lose at another full crowd. You know what I mean? You've got to have another full house.
But what does the crowd want to see? Do they want to see just a win, or do they just want to see effort and attitude?
Well, that helps, but they want to see a win.
Yeah,
and
only a win.
Well, I want to see a win because I want them to make the 8. You know, they finished with a bye. They've got another one in 2 weeks' time, so they're going to get some points. They need to get a win. Because they go up against the Bulldogs and they lose to Brisbane and the Bulldogs and get a bye. They're still fighting down the bottom of the table.
Quick break here on the program. You're in the Rugby League Hour. We'll come back with TK's top 5 and wrap it all up with a whole heap of your texts.
The Ifluix Cleanup Award.
I don't know about you, Tone. This is where we turn the goop, we turn the gunk, we turn it into gold. And I tell you what, I'd like to take and dunk them all into the Ifluix, mate. I'd like to throw them all into the pond and then the Ifluix afterwards and see whether they can come back and clean it up against Brisbane.
Well, there is one guy in that conversation you're just talking about that did clean up, and he gets my Ifluix award this week. Is Jaden Campbell, who played most of the game with a broken hand, went out there, kicked 11 goals, scored a try, and set a number of them up as well. The young boy coming from fullback and playing 5'8" and looking like it's his spot. You know, absolutely outstanding. Preston Campbell's younger boy there playing in that 6 jersey for the Titans on the weekend. I thought he just done Kieran Foran. I thought Kieran Foran was very good. You know, defensively he was good. But Preston Campbell, I like the 6. I think he's going to get bigger. It reminds me, have a look at his build and a young Greg Inglis. I reckon he's going to be one of our biggest 5'8s that we see. We haven't seen a big 5'8 for a long time.
TK's top 5.
It wasn't that long ago that you had the Warriors not only in the top 5 but at number 1.
Number 5.
Yeah, no, but now I'm picking them on the way home with 10 weeks to go. I'm going to put them into their spots. And the 5th spot is a tough one. I think the Dolphins are struggling. I think Wayne Bennett's lost sight of the ball. I think what he's doing is putting more effort into the bottom of the table in South than he is with the Dolphins at the moment, and they're sliding out. And I'm going to put the Bulldogs above him into that 5th spot.
But what?
Number 4.
If I may, they beat the Sharks a week ago on the road.
The Bulldogs are 7-7, mate.
The Dogs lost this weekend as well.
No, I'm telling you now, the Bulldogs are going to be battling for, I reckon, a 4th spot. But I don't know if they're going to get these guys in the Roosters. I said that they'll be back into the 4 and they'll be the team that scares every other team. I'd be worried about the way they're playing. You know why? Because I think their number 7 is on absolute fire, the young bloke. His kicking game's spot on, and he's got so many superstars around them that if he gets into one of those, like, flow through the next 10 weeks, his flow is just awesome. Look out, the Roosters could be anything.
3.
Well, they're hanging around there, the Sharks. I've got to leave them in there. I actually think if anyone's going to get knocked out of the 4, I think it's the Sharks, Lockie. I don't think the Sharks are... I want to see a couple more weeks of Nico Hines after Origin. I think this one on Wednesday is going to really hurt, especially if New South Wales win, Marty. I think Nico Hines will then start to go, man, it was me. You know what I mean? So...
some guys can't play Origin. It's as simple as that, isn't it? There are some guys... Luai hasn't had a great game at Origin either, have you? But both of those guys are good players.
Well... So. Luai's won three grand finals.
But when's he fronted up for the Blues, mate?
Number 2.
He's still running backwards from last year.
Yeah, well, your boys, the Panthers are still a number 2. I think they deserve number 2 for the fact that Nathan Cleary still isn't back. But there's talk that he's going to be back for the 3rd Origin. Be one hell of a game if New South Wales get this one down in Melbourne. You know, and then Nathan Cleary comes back and goes up to Brisbane and wins it for them and jumps back into the Panther side with all of his Origin stars. Oh, man, I'd hate to say it this early, and I'm not going to give it away this early, but, man, 4 finals in a row. I don't know who was the last time they did. I think St. George.
Yeah, it would have been back in the 60s,
mate. Number 1.
Well, we've got the best halfback in the world anyway. He's a Kiwi. Yep, Jerome Hughes. I think he's outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. I think he's leading the boys around. It's probably his finest season. I'm picking. You know, the next couple of years, look out for Jerome Hughes. There was talk about him heading back up to the Gold Coast and signing for them earlier on. He ain't going nowhere. I think he becomes an immortal down there at the Storm. When was the last time we had the best halfback in a competition?
And Stacey Jones was playing.
The man just set up the try.
That was the Rugby League Hour, brought to you by MicroBio Solutions Limited, solving environmental issues using green technologies. Visit microbio.co.nz.
It's